Put your foot hard on the brake, fire the engine up, and drop it into drive. If the whole car lunges forward like it's trying to run off without you, stop right there, because you just found a problem that most owners drive around with for years without ever knowing it exists. Now do the same thing in reverse. Big movement in both directions is a red flag, and it's telling you your engine mounts are done. Here's the thing about mounts. They're just rubber and metal. They cost almost nothing compared to everything they protect, and almost nobody thinks about them until the vibration gets so bad that the mirror starts blurring at a stoplight. Worn mounts are one of the most overlooked causes of shaking, rough idle, and even early transmission wear. Studies on drivetrain stress failures point at bad mounts contributing to roughly 20% of them, and once you understand what a mount actually does, that number makes perfect sense. That block of metal weighs several hundred pounds, and it's twisting against every gear change you make. If the rubber that's supposed to absorb that twist has turned into a cracked hockey puck, all of that motion goes straight into your axles, your hoses, your exhaust flex pipe, and the alignment between your engine and your transmission. I've seen cars come in for a torn CV boot, a cracked flex pipe, and a leaking power steering hose all at once, and the guy is convinced he's got 3 separate problems. He's got one problem. The engine has been dancing around under the hood for 2 years, and it took the rest of the engine bay with it. Replace a mount early, and you get your smoothness back, and you protect your transmission. Wait, and you're paying for the mount plus everything the mount destroyed. Now, while you're thinking about things that quietly grind themselves away, let's talk about the one your left foot might be doing right now. If you drive a manual, resting your foot on the clutch pedal feels like nothing. It feels harmless. It isn't. That little bit of pressure is enough to partially unload the pressure plate, which means your friction disc is actively rubbing itself into dust every single mile you drive. Not when you shift, all the time. That one lazy habit can cook a clutch by 40,000 miles on a part that should easily see well past 100,000. The fix costs you nothing. Foot completely off the pedal, unless you're actually changing gears. At a red light, put it in neutral and let the pedal come up instead of sitting there holding it in. And on a hill, use the parking brake to hold the car instead of slipping the clutch to balance it, because slipping the clutch on an incline is basically sanding it down on purpose. Follow those 3 rules, and you can easily triple the life of your clutch. That's not an exaggeration, that's just how directly this stuff scales. While we're on things people ignore because the car still drives fine, let's do oil leaks. Your oil level dropping is either the engine burning it, or the engine simply losing it out onto the road, and the second one gets waved off constantly. Somebody sees a small dark spot on the driveway, or catches that hot, burnt smell at a stoplight, and thinks, well, it still runs great. That's a mistake. Leaks almost always start small at the valve cover gasket, the oil pan gasket, or a crank seal, and they don't stay small. They turn into a steady drip, and the loss isn't the real problem. The real problem is that your engine spends the entire stretch between oil changes running on less protection than it was designed for, and if that seep suddenly opens up, the level can fall to genuinely dangerous territory before your warning light ever gets involved. A valve cover gasket is a cheap afternoon. A rear main seal that got ignored until it became a bearing problem is a completely different conversation. Check under the car once in a while, and if you see a spot or smell that burnt oil, deal with it while it's still just a gasket. If you're finding this useful so far, take a second and subscribe, because we're about to get into the technical stuff, and I'd rather not lose you halfway through. Alright? Your mass airflow sensor, the MAF. This little part sits right after your air filter, and its whole job is to measure the exact mass of air entering the engine. Your ECU takes that number and calculates precisely how much fuel to inject. Everything downstream depends on it being honest. The problem is what it's made of. Inside, there's a very fine heated wire, or a thin film element, and over time, oil vapor from the crankcase ventilation system and fine dust that slipped past the filter builds up on it. That coating acts like a jacket. The element can't shed heat the way it's supposed to, so it starts reporting less air than is actually going in, and your computer starts fueling for an engine that isn't there. What you feel is a car that drinks more gas than it used to, feels flat and lazy off the line, hesitates, sometimes stumbles at idle, and eventually throws a check engine light. Emissions go up right along with it. A lot of people chase this with new plugs, New coils, injector cleaner, all of it, when the actual culprit is a 5-minute cleaning job. Here's where I need you to pay attention, because this is where people destroy the part they're trying to save. Before I give you the answer, hit that subscribe button, because this next detail is the difference between a free fix and a $400 sensor. Do not clean a MAF sensor with general-purpose electrical contact cleaner. Do not use brake cleaner. Do not use carb cleaner. Do not use gasoline. And please do not use WD-40. Those either leave a residue on the element or attack the coating on it outright. The only correct thing is a dedicated residue-free MAF sensor cleaner. Spray it, let it air dry completely, never touch the wire with a rag or a brush or your finger, and put it back. Once every 6 months, or every 12,000 miles, is plenty for most cars. And while you've got that spray in your hand, one hard rule. The oxygen sensor is not the MAF sensor. You never clean an O2 sensor. It's designed to burn itself clean at operating temperature, and any chemical you spray on it will poison the element. When an O2 sensor goes bad, it gets replaced. Full stop. Now here's one nobody ever brings up, and it's the fluid that actually stops your car. Brake fluid is hygroscopic, which is a fancy way of saying it pulls moisture out of the air, right through the rubber hoses and past the reservoir cap, a little more every year. Fresh fluid boils somewhere around 450 degrees Fahrenheit. Get just 3% water into it, and that boiling point can collapse to around 300. That doesn't matter at the grocery store. It matters enormously the first time you're coming down a long grade riding the brakes with a loaded car, because when that moisture flashes to vapor, you get a soft, sinking pedal exactly when you need the opposite. And it's not just about the pedal. That water sits in your calipers, your lines, and your ABS module, and quietly corrodes them from the inside. An ABS module is a very expensive way to learn about a fluid flush. Do it every 2 to 3 years regardless of mileage, because this one runs on a calendar, not an odometer. If engine oil is the blood of your car, transmission fluid is the nervous system. It keeps your shifts crisp and your driving smooth, and most drivers forget it exists until something slips, shudders, or starts smelling burnt. That fluid breaks down fastest under heat, which means towing, hauling, and sitting in stop-and-go traffic all age it much faster than steady highway miles. Fresh fluid clears out the accumulated debris and gives you something that can actually handle the heat and pressure of daily driving. Depending on what the manufacturer says, somewhere between 30 and 60,000 miles is the realistic window. And yes, I know some cars are advertised with fluid that's supposed to last the life of the vehicle. Ask yourself whose definition of life they're using. Changing it before the transmission locks up buys you years. One more that gets ignored until it strands somebody. Your serpentine belt and the tensioner that keeps it tight. Everybody knows a squealing belt is bad, but almost nobody checks the tensioner. And that's the part that actually fails first on a lot of cars. The spring inside weakens, the pulley bearing starts to whine, and now the belt is slapping instead of gripping. Look at the belt for shiny glazed edges and fine cracks across the ribs. And with the engine off, feel the tensioner and the idler pulleys for roughness or play. When that belt lets go, it takes your water pump, your alternator, and your power steering with it, all at once, usually far from home. Somewhere between 60 and 90,000 miles do the belt and the tensioner together, because putting a new belt on a tired tensioner is just paying twice. And last, the one that quietly does more damage than everything else combined. Constant short trips. If your driving is nothing but errands around the neighborhood, the store, a coffee run, 5 or 10 minutes at a time, you probably assume the car is barely working. The opposite is true. The vast majority of engine wear happens before the engine is fully warm. On short drives, your oil never reaches its proper operating temperature, so it never sheds the fuel and moisture it picked up. Your battery never gets a full recharge, and the condensation that forms inside the engine and the exhaust never gets hot enough to boil off, so that water mixes into the oil and turns to sludge, and it sits trapped in the exhaust and rusts it from the inside out. That's exactly why a city car can be more worn out than a highway car with twice the miles on the clock. The fix is simple. Batch your errands into one longer trip instead of 4 short ones, and once a week give the car a real drive, long enough that everything reaches full temperature and burns the moisture out. So there it is. Mounts you can test in your own driveway in 30 seconds. a left foot that needs to stay off the clutch, oil spots that never stay small, a MAF sensor that only likes one specific cleaner, brake fluid that ages on a calendar, transmission fluid that hates heat, a tensioner that fails before the belt does, and short trips that punish an engine harder than the highway ever will. None of this is expensive. All of it is easy to skip. Now I want to hear from you. Drop a comment and tell me what your car is doing right now, whether it's a weird noise, a code you scanned and can't figure out, or gas mileage that fell off a cliff for no obvious reason. I read them, and there's a good chance somebody else in the comments has fixed the exact same thing. Subscribe so you catch the next one, and I'll see you in the next video.